Well, Democrats and everyone else who cares about democracy are breathing a huge sigh of relief after every single election-denying candidate who would have power over elections in a swing state lost, or in Kari Lake's case, is pretty much on her way to losing their elections, which is good news for 2024, given that Trump or whichever Republican won't be able to steal the election by having Republican states ignore the votes and just hand the Electoral College over. But the threat to democracy isn't over, friends. The Republican Party is still an extremist party. As The Atlantic's Ron Brownstein points out, while in Democratic-leaning and swing states, voters last week delivered an unmistakable cry of resistance to the restrictive Republican social agenda, in red states where Republicans have actually imposed that agenda over the past 2 years, Republican governors cruised to re-election without any discernible backlash. Just look at states like Texas and Florida. But the new media meme that replaces the old inflation and crime media meme, have you noticed that nobody's talking about those things anymore? Is that after the supposed red wave turned into a red wedding, infighting Republicans will now shift away from MAGA extremism and find their way to the safe ideological middle. I mean, over the past week, there's been a growing number of Republicans distancing themselves from Donald Trump. But is that really a change? Or just a change back? Once Trump-friendly Congressman Mo Brooks said it would be a bad mistake to nominate Trump as the party's 2024 presidential nominee, calling him, quote, dishonest, disloyal, incompetent, and crude. But Brooks's origin isn't the center. It's the Tea Party. And if Republicans do dump Trump and his MAGA cronies, which, keep in mind, would come only after losing 3 consecutive elections, plus a Georgia runoff, 2 impeachments, and an armed insurrection to try to overthrow the government. The alternative is shaping up to be Ron DeSantis, whose priorities as Florida governor include going after Mickey Mouse, teachers, and drag brunches and yelling at school kids because they're wearing masks to prevent COVID. And oh, did I mention he started out as a member of, say it with me, the Tea Party. And with Trump supposedly gearing up to announce another run for president tomorrow, it's abundantly clear that even if some Beltway Republicans want him to go away, there is a very high chance that Trump won't listen, as this weekend's Saturday Night Live depicted perfectly.
Don't you need to, walk your daughter down the aisle?
Missed it. Anyway, what are you guys talking about? What are you guys talking about? You see Fablemans?
Mr. President, I don't know how to tell you this, but we've moved on. We can't have you on the show anymore.
What? What did I do?
It's because you lost. Mr. President, we just don't see a future with you. But you know what? We can still be friends, okay? So bye-bye now.
Wait. I have a big announcement, November 15th. Hey, don't push me off. I have a big announcement, and it's not what you think.
Joining me now is Michelle Goldberg, New York Times columnist and MSNBC political analyst, and Matthew Dowd, political strategist and founder of Country Over Party. And Matt, I want to start with you on this because I feel like the biggest unrecognized fact in media coverage over the past probably decade has been not realizing that the Tea Party was already extreme. It was an extremist movement against President Obama, backed by people like the Koch brothers, and it is now the basis of the party and the base of the MAGA movement. Let me just go through it. Current senators who are Tea Party: Cruz, Rubio, Ron Johnson, Rand Paul, Mike Lee, who wants to get rid of Social Security, Tim Scott. Johnson also wants to get rid of Social Security. Congressmen who were Tea Party and then became MAGA and wanted to overthrow the election: Louis Gohmert, Matt Gaetz, Mo Brooks. Steve Scalise is in leadership. He was a Tea Partier. Jim Jordan. That doesn't even include Ron DeSantis, who was governor, Tea Party. Jeff Sessions, Mick Mulvaney, who joined the Trump cabinet. Mark Meadows. I could go on. And let me just show y'all, remind you what the Tea Party was. Here are their protests. This is what they looked like. Can we just show this? This is cut 5 for my one there. This is the Tea Party movement. This was pre-MAGA. You see them? And now here they are, protesting against Obamacare. Matt, that was 10 years before the insurrection when they just came back and just busted in the building. So the idea that they're somehow going to moderate instead of just pivot right back to that, which is what Ron DeSantis is. It mystifies me that anyone believes it. Your thoughts?
Well, this is why I said this, and I don't know if you remember, I said in September of 2015, that Donald Trump would be the Republican nominee of the party. Not that I had some great insight into this, but I did know what the Republican Party had become. And Donald Trump didn't change the Republican Party. Donald Trump didn't change it. He revealed it. He revealed it for who they are. And that's the problem they have. Just pushing Donald Trump off the stage is not going to even come close to solving the problem, because this is who they are. They are now the villagers who carried the torches are now in charge of the village. And so the Republicans have allowed this to happen. And so they've allowed all the barriers to be knocked down, have no guardrails, have nothing. And their problem is fundamentally now not with Donald Trump, in my view, though he's a proximate problem for them. The problem is their base, because their base is completely out of sync with the sort of mainstream of America. That's the problem. And until they start speaking truth to their base, until they start saying, no, we don't believe any of that, that's not true, we shouldn't do that, this problem is fundamentally not going to be solved, because the Republican Party existed before Donald Trump, and it's going to exist after Donald Trump. This is who they are.
And Michelle, I mean, you can go back to the Pew Research and Public Religion Research Institute, all their data. People who were with the Tea Party were fundamentally motivated by fear of demographic change, anger toward groups like Muslims, anger toward women, anger a lot toward blacks and black people voting. It was the same drivers that made MAGAism. And then everyone was like shocked. Oh, my God, the Republicans like Trump? Yeah, because he expressed anger at all of those exact same groups. Now you have Tea Partiers like Matt Gaetz and Ted Cruz saying, we don't want Mitch McConnell to be the leader of the party in the Senate anymore, and we don't want Kevin McCarthy, who are non-Tea Partiers. Like, they want to go to like Jim Jordan. They want to go back to the Tea Party people, right? That's the change.
I think that there are both, with Donald Trump, there's both kind of continuities with what the Republican Party was before him and certain radical breaks. I mean, I wrote a book that came out in 2006. The subtitle was The Rise of Christian Nationalism. So I've obviously been concerned about the far right of the Republican Party for quite some time. At the same time, I do think that there are things that are particularly sinister about Donald Trump. I mean, I think that there is a level of shamelessness and chaos and sort of blatant criminality that is distinct. I mean, it's been interesting to see how many of the election deniers, Carrie Lake aside, how many of the election deniers who have run for various offices have sort of not had the audacity that Trump had to try to stir up a mob against their own losses. There's a very specific sort of sociopathy that I think that Trump has. But I also don't think that the alternatives to Trump are going to be more ideologically moderate. They will, I think, be a little bit more orderly.
Exactly.
Well,
I mean, look, Matt, Trump took MAGA and gave it a king and tied it to a very right-wing mean Jesus. He just took it and just added the Christian nationalism to it. He didn't innovate anything. I'm sorry, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say what I wanted to say is what's amazing, and I agree with what Michelle just said. Well, what's amazing, though, is yes, Donald Trump did those things, but what happened is the Republican Party said, that's fine by us, right?
Yes.
It went from Donald Trump did all these sort of things that are anti-norms, but now the Republican Party has said, that's fine. What I think it's revealed, what I think it's going to show is people have to look at Carrie Lake. Carrie Lake acts the most like Donald Trump of all the candidates. And what you saw was there's not some issue lineup. There's not a whole degree of issues they all agree on, other than the fact they don't like democracy. They all seem to agree on that. They don't like democracy, a full-fail democracy. What they do all is act in this mean, indecent, coarse format. And because they've realized they can do that and stir up the Republican base in the course of this. So if we get past Donald Trump and the Republican Party as the nominee, it's going to be a mean, coarse, indecent person, because that's what's now become acceptable.
It's the reason they like DeSantis, Michelle. They only like him because of how mean he is. He's a little guy. He's a little diminutive guy. He's like a little mean guy, right? And the reality is the only thing we're missing from this, what you both have put together, is that at the top of the Tea Party were the super rich elite. It was the Koch brothers. It was the Mercers. That's who was funding it because they want the mean as bread and circuses for working class white folks so that they can get the only thing they care about, the precious. Tax cuts for the rich. They don't want to pay taxes. They don't want Social Security. They want to get rid of Medicare because they don't want to pay bloody taxes. And sometimes when they're honest, like Mike Lee, they just say it, and their voters vote for them again. Ron Johnson and Mike Lee said, we're getting rid of your Social Security. And they're like, yeah, but the blacks can't vote, right? They're like, we got it, we're good. It's like there's no cruelty that their voters won't take because it's demographic panic that's pushing it. I don't know how else to say it.
But I do think that one thing that might have changed with this midterms is that the midterms have demonstrated that there is a price for that sort of naked cruelty. For the last 5 years, there's just been impunity for it. And one of the reasons that Donald Trump sort of stroked all the erogenous zones of the right is because he gave them permission to act on their basest impulses and said there would be impunity. Now we've seen a lot of consequences, for the party that cackled at the assault on Nancy Pelosi's husband. We've seen consequences for the party that's been kind of indifferent to the plight of 10-year-old rape victims. And I think that might lead to, if not a change of heart, at least a sort of level of hypocrisy that acknowledges that there's some things you shouldn't say out loud.